Hi, I'm Stella. My family is very wealthy. We live in a highly secure villa outside the city. People think that we are rich because my dad invests in stocks, but this is a lie that my parents made up. Actually, my dad hasn't worked since the day I was born. So where did we get all this money? From my crying. You heard that right. Because every time I cry, in addition to tears, a pearl comes out. Yes, just one pearl every time. But since it's a high-quality pearl, it's worth $25,000. As you see, every time I cry, I make a small fortune for my family. In nature, pearls are produced by oysters. When something enters the oyster through its shell, it secretes a fluid to protect itself. It coats the uninvited guest with this fluid and renders it harmless. In time, the fluid hardens and becomes a pearl. Pearls are a wonder of nature. They are very rare, and that's why they are extremely expensive. So why do I cry pearls? I don't know. I asked my mother about it once. She said, "We discovered you were crying pearls when you were a baby. We were obviously very surprised and we wanted to know why. But if we had asked our doctors or scientists about it, your secret would have come out. For your safety, we decided not to tell anyone. For all we know, this is a miracle. Miracles do happen, and we witness them. That's all we can do." My parents take every precaution they can think of to keep this a secret. They are worried about the mob kidnapping me if anyone finds out. I'm scared too. That's why I follow every rule my family has put in place to keep my secret safe. For example, I never leave home by myself. I've never been to school. I'm being homeschooled. I don't use social media. When I was younger, I wasn't even allowed to go online. Thankfully, my family trusts me enough to use the internet now. I know that my life is boring, but I can honestly say that I'm happy. The only thing that upsets me is that I have no friends. I have a cousin, Cecilia, who is my age. She visits us once or twice a year with my aunt and uncle. She's the only person I can call my friend, but I don't particularly like her. Whenever we hang out, she always complains about everything I have. She says, "Your house is too big. Ours looks like a chicken coop. You have amazing clothes. I have to wear all this cheap stuff. It's not fair." Yes, they are not very well off, but according to my dad, it's their own fault. My dad told me the only reason they ever visit is to ask for money. Once I gave them $30,000. They went straight to Vegas. They stayed at the most expensive hotel. They gambled from dusk till dawn. They lost everything in a week and then came back home. Cecilia also steals stuff from my room whenever she comes over. She starts going through my things as soon as she is alone in the room. If she likes something, she puts it in her bag. Once one of my rings and a pair of sunglasses went missing. The next time she came to visit, she was wearing both the sunglasses and the ring. Even though I couldn't believe she had the nerve to show up like that, I couldn't say anything. Normally, when Cecilia and her family come over, they stay for a few hours and then leave. But that night, her mom said, "We had a little too much wine at dinner. We really shouldn't drive. Why don't we stay over?" My mom had to say yes, even though she didn't love the idea. If that weren't enough, Cecilia said, "Let's have a slumber party," and said we could sleep together in my bed. Before we went to bed, she said, "We can't have a slumber party without milk and cookies." I thought, why did this girl suddenly start acting like she's my best friend? I would find out soon enough. When I woke up, I had a terrible headache. My uncle, aunt, and Cecilia were standing in front of me. Cecilia said, "We know where your money comes from. Now it's our turn. You will make us rich." I said to myself, "Don't cry. Don't give these horrible people what they want." But at the same time, I was shaking with fear. My eyes involuntarily welled up. My aunt got really excited. "She's going to cry," she said. "Let's see if what she wrote in her diary is true. Does she really cry pearls?" That's when everything became clear. I told you I was sad about not having any friends. That's why 3 months ago I started keeping a diary. I was writing down everything I wanted to tell a friend. Apparently, Cecilia had been looking for something to swipe from my room again. That's how she must have found my diary. I had written about crying pearls. Obviously, Cecilia had told her parents, and they decided to kidnap me. I turned to Cecilia. "You put something in my milk last night, didn't you?" I asked. Her mom was the one who replied, "2 huge sleeping pills. I have insomnia and I can't sleep without taking those pills. Finally, something good came out of this damn disease," she said, belting out a laugh. Then she looked down into my eyes. "I thought you were about to cry. Relax. You can cry as much as you want while you're with us." My uncle said, "You wrote in your diary that a single pearl is worth $25,000. pearl must be huge. How does it come out of your eye? I looked at him with contempt. It's not the size of the pearl that determines its price, it's the quality, I said. He didn't like my attitude. I can't wait to see that glorious pearl. When are you gonna cry? If you don't cry soon, we'll have to make you. I felt like I was about to break down any second, but somehow I managed to keep it together. I was determined not to give them what they wanted. We were next to a house in the middle of the woods. My aunt grabbed me by the arm and led me inside. Cecilia followed us. We entered a room. Cecilia said, "It's no secret that I've always been jealous of you. Now I'm even more jealous. In fact, I hate you for being so special. Thankfully, you will be our servant from now on. Thanks to you, we'll be rich. I'm happy to make you cry if you can't do it on your own." Very calmly, I said, "No, I'm not going to cry. Whatever you do, you won't be able to make me cry. My dad must have called the police. I'm sure they're looking for us as we speak." Cecilia said mockingly, "Your parents keep you at home at all times. I wonder why. They must be very scared for the secret to come out. You know very well that they won't go to the police." My aunt said, "When we come back to this room, we want to see at least one of those pearls. Otherwise, we won't be responsible for what might happen to you," and slammed the door. Then she locked it. I was wondering what my parents were doing. Cecilia was right. They couldn't have called the police. Even if they did, it was highly unlikely that the police would find us. We were deep in the woods. I was feeling really awful. I really wanted to cry. I knew I wasn't supposed to, but I couldn't help it. As always, a pearl came out of my eye and dropped to the ground. I picked it up. It looked gorgeous. Crying pearls was obviously a blessing, but it was also a curse. I couldn't stop myself. I started sobbing. Another pearl came out. That's when I realized something. The worse I felt, the more beautiful the pearl. These ones were so much smoother than any pearl I'd cried before. They were glistening. I couldn't give these up. I put them in my mouth. All I could think of was to swallow them. At that moment, the door opened. Cecilia came in. Seeing me, she yelled, "Mom, come quick! Her eyes are red! She cried!" I decided not to swallow the pearls. I had an idea. I opened my mouth and made sure Cecilia saw them. She called her parents again, even louder this time. "Mom, Dad, she cried 2 pearls, but they're in her mouth. Come here now!" My aunt and uncle came running into the room. I opened my mouth and showed them the pearls. Then I pointed with my finger, first to my throat, then to my stomach. They all froze. "She means she's going to swallow them!" Cecilia screamed. I nodded. She understood what I was saying. This time I pointed at the door. Cecilia turned to her parents. "What are we going to do? She's threatening us with swallowing the pearls," she said. "What do you want? Do you think we'll let you go?" my aunt said threateningly. My uncle stopped his wife. "Stop. She's holding $50,000 in her mouth right now. Those are our pearls. Don't let them go to waste." He pulled out his phone. He dialed a number. He showed me the phone screen and saw that he was video calling my parents. They went crazy when they saw me. My mom was so excited. She said, "Honey, are you okay? It was your uncle who did it, wasn't it?" My dad knew it was my uncle who was holding the phone. "You snake! I will make you pay for this!" he roared. My uncle replied, "Your daughter has 2 pearls in her mouth. Tell her to give them to us. Otherwise, you will never see her again." "Honey, please give them the pearls. These are evil people. They can hurt you. Please listen to me," my mom begged me. I had listened to my mom my whole life, but this time, I was going to do what I wanted. I looked first at my uncle, then at my aunt, and finally at Cecilia. They were watching to see what I was going to do. I pointed to my mouth with both my index fingers, and I swallowed the pearls. I heard my parents scream over the phone, and Cecilia and her parents did too. But I was so happy I did that. "The pearls taste even better than they look," I said. My uncle was so mad. He threw the phone and started walking towards me. At that moment, there was a loud bang on the door. My uncle and his wife looked at each other, terrified. "We're in the middle of the woods. Who can this be?" my uncle whispered. My aunt and Cecilia were waiting anxiously. From what I could gather, the person at the door was someone my uncle knew. He seemed very surprised when he asked, "Why are you here?" The person who arrived laughed and replied, "My sister called me. You weren't thinking about partying without me, were ya?" Cecilia and her mom were relieved because the person who showed up was my aunt's older brother, Walter. I'd seen him only once before. All I could remember was that he was an unpleasant man. When Walter walked in, my aunt said, Why did you come early? I told you to come tomorrow. Walter said, the story you told me over the phone got me really excited. I couldn't wait until tomorrow. I just had to see this goose with the golden eggs. I still find it difficult to believe. Is this girl really crying pearls? She replied, yes, she really cries pearls. She just cried 2 of them in a row, but then she swallowed them both. Walter looked at me with a grin. So, you're a tough cookie. Fantastic. I spent half my life in jail. My specialty is helping people like you find the right path. I began shaking with fear. I almost started tearing up again, but I managed to hold it back. Walter turned to Cecilia. I need to eat something. I've been driving for 5 hours straight. If my dear niece wants to make her uncle a snack, I won't say no. Cecilia took her uncle's arm. We picked up some snacks on the way. Nibble on these for now. Soon we'll be eating only at the best restaurants anyway, she said. They were laughing as they left the room. My uncle glared at my aunt. Why did you call your brother? The man is a total pain in the neck. He shouldn't have known about this. She said, you do realize that we kidnapped someone, right? Do you think we can hide in this house forever? We need to get out of the country right away. Walter will help us cross the border. We should head over to Mexico first, and from there, we can go wherever we want, as long as we have this no-limit credit card with us. Walter and Cecilia came back grinning. Cecilia was holding half an onion. She said, we had a brilliant idea, and held the onion up to my face. How about a crying sash, my dear cousin? We found an easy way to make you cry. When my eyes welled up, they all got really excited. I grimaced. Can you get that away from my face, please? I need to cry naturally for the pearls to form. That onion is only good for stinking up this room. My aunt screamed as if she had the best idea ever. Cecilia, pull up a sentimental song. You remember that song that always makes me cry? Oh, what is it called? I'm not a crybaby like you, I said to her. No song or movie can make me cry. But some of the songs I can sing can make you cry, Walter said, baring all of his teeth. They laughed. Walter continued in a calm voice. You don't have to worry. I'll take care of this tough girl. But first, let's drink up. We are in possession of a goose that lays golden eggs. We have to celebrate that. Walter's words worked. They were in a good mood as they left the room. I laid down, feeling desperate. All of a sudden, I woke up to the sound of the door slamming. I saw Walter when I finally managed to get my eyes open. He was yelling, "Get up! Now! We're leaving!" I was still having a hard time understanding what was happening. Walter grabbed my arm and led me out of the room. I looked inside the house. My uncle, aunt, and Cecilia were all lying on the floor. What did you do to them? I screamed. Don't worry, they're sleeping like babies. Then Walter pushed me outside. After hours of driving, we finally stopped. Walter got me out of the car, and we were in a place that looked like a garage. There were a lot of cars around and 4 big guys. One of them pointed to a car that was parked right beside me and screamed, "Boss, you love a Mercedes? Look, we got a spectacular one!" Without even looking at the car, he said, "Good job, but from now on, we won't have to steal cars. We'll have so much money on our hands thanks to her. You'll find out soon enough and thank me for the rest of your life," he growled. The guy with tattoos wasn't happy, but before he could say anything, Walter shoved me into a room. I'd never felt so scared in my life. I was fighting back tears, but then I couldn't. I started crying. A perfect pearl emerged out of my eye. Walter grabbed it before it fell to the ground. He was looking at it, fascinated. He was also very surprised. He mumbled to himself, "I'd never have believed it if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes." Then he looked at me. "You're the best thing that could ever happen to me. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Why should I share it with those idiots outside? You should be crying only for me. All these pearls must be mine," he said. He'd made up his mind. He grabbed my arm and dragged me outside. The men were staring at me in disbelief. Walter sensed that there was something going on. One of them said, "We saw everything from the security camera. Was that a real pearl that came out of the girl's eye?" Then he turned to me. "But how? How can you do that?" he asked. Pulling me towards the car, Walter yelled, "There's no such thing. That stuff only happens in fairy tales. You saw it wrong." I resisted Walter's pull and stopped him. I yelled back at them, "What you saw was real. I cry pearls. Each pearl is worth $25,000. If you stop him, I'll give you 40 pearls each. That makes $1 million per person." They hesitated for a second. Then they looked at each other. The man in tattoos said, "Attack!" All hell broke loose. I stepped aside and watched everything go down. After a while, they tied Walter to a chair. He was out of breath. "I'm your boss. Let me go now. I'll give you 100 pearls each." I laughed. "You might have 100 pearls, but if you get caught, pearls won't help you out in prison. I won't tell the police about you. You can trust me. Every time I cry a pearl, it will go toward my debt to you," I said. Walter was about to say something, but the men put a gag in his mouth to keep him quiet. "You can go now. You'll hear from me soon," I said to them. I took out Walter's phone and called 911. The police arrived shortly after. I asked them, "Will you excuse me for a minute? I'll be back soon." I had to run to an empty room because I was about to shed some happy tears. When I started to cry, the most beautiful pearl that I'd ever seen in my life came out. I put the pearl in my pocket. I owed 160 pearls to the men who saved me, so I had 159 more to go. When I got back, Walter was telling the police, "Please believe me, this girl is crying pearls. Let me go. We can all be rich together." The policeman laughed at him. One of them said, "Hey, yeah, and I'm crying diamonds. These guys are getting more and more creative to get themselves out of jail." The policeman had called my parents. Both of them were a mess when they arrived. My mom was crying. "Please don't hug me. Just get me out of here," I said. The police were surprised to see me act this way. Of course, there was a reason for it. If I had hugged my family, I would have immediately started crying, and then they would have realized Walter was telling the truth. I told my parents everything on the way home. I cried a few times as I was telling my story to them, so I got 5 more pearls on the ride home. 154 to go. Currently, we live in a different country. I was against it at first, but my mom said, "We were the only ones who knew your secret until now, but today there are 8 other people who know you cry pearls. We have to do this for your safety. We need to get away from here." I had to agree. I can't tell you where we live now, but I can tell you that we are doing really well. I did pay my debt to those guys that saved me. And because they were mostly happy tears, the pearls that came out were all perfect too. I'm sure they sold them for more than $25,000. Because I owe my life to them, I sent them 10 more pearls each as a bonus. I'm sure you're curious to know what happened to my uncle, aunt, and Cecilia. I really don't know. The last time I saw them was as I was leaving the cabin in the forest. They were sleeping soundly because of the sleeping pills. We never heard from them again. Maybe they got scared of getting caught by the police and fled to Mexico. But life can't be easy for them because I'm not around.